Good morning, students. I'm your computer teacher. Myself, Mahima Seth. Today in this session, we will start with the very first chapter, that is computer hardware components. Now, when we talk about computer, the very first thing which comes in our mind that what is computer? So, computer is a special machine that performs tasks such as calculation, data processing and handling, electronic communication, etc. under the control of a set of instructions called a program. So, computer is a machine which takes input from us, processes the data and produces the output and provide it on the screen and store the result. So the main functions of computer are to accept the data, to process the data, to produce output and fourth to store the result. Now when we classify computer, the computer can be broadly classified into two parts. First hardware, second software. Now what is a hardware and what is a software? So a very common definition which we have studied is the physical component that make up a computer system is hardware, like the system which we can see, the things which we can touch, all the hardware parts are the hardware components of the computer. Then software, the computer programs which is inside the computer, which is inside the CPU, the computer program that tells the computer that what the computer has to do are the software. Now, what is a computer? So again, computer represents the physical and tangible components of a computer, that is the computer that can be seen and touched. So the examples of the input devices are keyboard and mouse, and both are the hardware components because we can see, we can touch keyboard as well as mouse. Now output device, printer and monitor, these both are also the hardware parts because we can see and touch the printer and the monitor also. Now the secondary storage devices like hard disk, CD, DVD, we can all see and touch these components. Similarly, internal components like CPU, motherboard, RAM, etc. We can also see and feel these, even touch these CPU, motherboard and RAM. So these are the examples of hardware components. Now, when we talk about the picture of computer, then we broadly see all these parts like the screen, the system unit, the speaker, the keyboard, the mouse, the microphone, the monitor, and all these are the hardware components because we can easily see, feel and touch these parts of the computer. Now again, if we revise that what is a hardware, so it refers to object that we can actually touch like disk drives, display screens, keyboards, printers, boards and chips. Now next comes the internal hardware components. Now when we talk about hardware components, the hardware components can be classified into internal as well as external hardware components. Internal hardware components means all those components which is inside the computer case. Inside the computer case means inside the system unit which is given along with the monitor of the system. Now CPU, RAM, ROM, graphic card, motherboard, sound card, network interface card, internal fan, all these are the internal hardware components of the computer. Now again we can see in this picture that this is the case of the system unit, that is the we commonly called it system unit. Now In this system unit, there is power supply, DVD, ROM, motherboard, CPU, graphic cards, sound card, network interface card, internal fan, etc. So, the first internal hardware component is the central processing unit, commonly called CPU. We called it as the brain of the computer, which carries out software instruction. In our common language, we called CPU as the brain of the computer because all the processing part, all the thinking part is done by this part of the system. For example, Pentium processor, like other processes which is being developed by different companies. Now, as we consider it as the brain of the computer, so the speed of this is measured in hertz, that is megahertz or gigahertz. Next comes the motherboard. You must have seen this board in your old television. If you have got any old television in your home, then you can easily see this device. This is the motherboard. Actually, this is just the printed circuit board which has got all the circuits printed, and with the help of this board, the particular device work. And as per the definition, a motherboard is the main printed circuit board in a computer. The motherboard is a computer's central communication backbone, connectivity point through which all components and external peripherals connect. Now, all components means keyboard, mouse, printer, scanner, monitor, all the things are connected to this board only, this printed circuit only. And external peripherals means all the external devices like joystick, like speaker, like motherboard, like keyboard, all these things are connected to this only. Now, next is the graphic card. You must have heard about this word graphic card. Now, graphic card is the card which is responsible for producing the display in your screen. It gives you the high quality display in your monitor also. So, this is the only device which is responsible for making display and giving you the good quality picture. It controls the pixels on the screen and make the computer chip hot. Next is video card. Video card is responsible for displaying images onto the screen. Made for PCI, AGP or PCI Express expansion slot. Video card, we can also say that it is also like a graphic card, but it includes the functionality of sound card also. Next comes the system clock. You must have seen that when you switch on the system, a clock is there at the taskbar, that is desktop taskbar, and that clock continuously works like your watch in your hand, like the clock on the wall. That is called the system clock. System clock determines the clock speed of the computer, which is the speed at which a microprocessor executes instruction. Every computer contains an internal clock that regulates the rate at which instructions are executed and synchronizes all the various computer components. So this system clocks helps in two ways. It gives you the time also in your system, and the second part is it synchronizes the work of the system. It determines the speed, that at what speed the processor is performing the instructions. Next is the BIOS. BIOS means basic input output system. Software hardwired on motherboard. The basic purpose of the BIOS is to start up the computer because it contains all those programs which are responsible to start up the system, or you can say it is the first software that runs when you switch on the PC, when you switch on your system, the very first program, the very first software which runs is the BIOS. Next comes memory. Now you must have seen that you must be knowing that memory means whatever we are doing in our system that gets stored for our future use, as well as we can store that particular data randomly also. So when we talk about memory, memory means anything which can store data for future purpose. Now memory can be classified into two parts, that is the primary memory and the secondary memory. Primary memory means the memory which stores data for some time. That is when the system is processing the data, when the system is processing the instruction, at that moment the system has to store the data. That is the primary memory, like random access memory, RAM. Now secondary memory means memory which is used to store data for long term purpose, like we used to store the data in our hard disk, we used to store the data in CDs, DVDs, floppy disk, pen drives, etc. And one thing more, primary memory is non-removable. This primary memory is attached to the motherboard of that system unit, and secondary memory is the detachable memory. It is the removable memory. We can remove this memory, and above all this is portable also. Wherever we move, we can carry this memory with us. So RAM versus ROM. Now RAM means random access memory. Random access memory means the primary memory which is used to store the data for random purpose. When the system is processing the data, when the system is processing the instruction, at that moment the system has to store the data for some time. That is the random access memory. Now next is read only memory, that is ROM, which is for the future use. We can store data for the long term purpose. Now you can easily see the classification in this, that RAM can be classified as DRAM and SRAM. DRAM means dynamic random access memory and SRAM means static random access memory. Now dynamic random access memory means a memory chip that is used as the main memory, and static random access memory means a memory chip that is used as a cache memory. Now cache memory and main memory. Main memory means a memory which is used to store the data for the time being when the processor is performing the instruction. At that time the data is stored in dynamic random access memory. And static RAM, that is SRAM. SRAM is worked as a cache memory. Cache memory means it also stores the data, but it stores the data for a near bit longer time than the dynamic RAM. Next, again read only memory. This is read only memory, which is the permanent type of memory that computer stores and does not changes. I have told you earlier also that ROM is a detachable memory. You can say it is a portable memory, like we store data in CDs, we store data in DVDs, in pen drives, in floppy disks. These are the read only memory. We cannot make any changes in these memory. It stores the information even if we shut down our computer, but as far as RAM is considered, when we shut down our computer, the RAM get erased, it again refreshed, and when we again switch on the computer, we'll get a RAM which is refreshed without any data. Read-only memory holds a small special piece of software, the boot up program. The non-volatile storage. Non-volatile storage means the storage which will not get erased, never lost, even if the power is switched op, and this is also attached in the motherboard. Now the second, again, RAM, SDRAM and dynamic DRAM and SDRAM. I have already told you about this. Now, parts of ROM. Now, ROM can be classified into three parts: PROM, EPROM, EEPROM. PROM means programmable read-only memory. EPROM means erasable programmable read-only memory. EEPROM means electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. So PROM means that this ROM can be programmed, can be you can say it can be erased and it can be edited. Programmable read-only memory by the user using a standard PROM programmer. By burning some special type of fuses, once programmed, will not be possible to program it again. If this type of memory is once programmed, then it is not possible to erase the data and make the data edited. Now EPROM, that is erasable programmable read-only memory. The chip can be erased and chip reprogrammed. Programming process consists in charging some internal capacitors. The UV lights makes those capacitors to leak their charge, thus resetting the chip. Now EPROM, erasable programmable read-only memory. This memory can also be erased once and can be reprogrammed, but not after that. Now electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. Now electrically erasable programmable read-only memory means it is possible to modify individual locations of the memory, leaving other locations unchanged. One common use of the EEPROM is in BIOS of personal computer, that we can easily make changes in the BIOS of the computer. Next is hard disk. A hard disk drive is a data storage device used for storing and retrieving digital information using rapidly rotating disk coated with magnetic material. Now this is the hard disk. This is how the hard disk looks internally. This is connected in our system unit and it is attached with the motherboard. Now this is the hard disk which stores our data when we work in our system unit. This is also the secondary storage device. This is also the secondary memory. But this is we can detach this memory, but it is not on the common basis. We cannot take this hard disk and move from one place to another. It is also a portable memory, but in common we do not carry it with us. If we have to store data with us, if we have to carry data with us, for that point we use CD, DVDs, pen drives instead of this hard disk. Next comes modem. Now modem, this word is classified into two parts, that is MO and DEM. MO means modulator and DEM is demodulator. That is to convert. This particular device is to convert the signals from one part to another and again from another part to the first one. This modem is used to transmit data from telephone line to computer and from computer to telephone line. Now both these devices are different. One is using the analog signal and the other is using the digital signal. Now in order to convert this data, we use a device, that is modem. Next comes the SMPS. SMPS is commonly called switch mode power supply. Now this is also called the powerhouse of the computer, or you can say like the inverter which works in our system. This is similar type of thing which is with the system unit. It is the only you can say the device which provides current to the system. It supplies power to other components like motherboard, hard drive, CD, DVD-ROM, floppy disk. It reduces the amount of voltage, and it also used to handle the AC as well as the DC current. So like the you can say the electric board which is there in our house, which is responsible to manage the functionality of the electricity in our home. Similarly, this powerhouse, this switch mode power supply works, and it is commonly called SMPS. Next comes the CPU fan and heat sink. Now you must have seen this device. This device is located just just above the motherboard processor, and the work of this is to make the processor cool, to provide enough air to the processor so that it will not heat up. These two components work together in keeping the CPU from overheating. This protects the processor from overheating by providing enough amount of air at the time of requirement. This metal is called the heat sink, as it conducts heat from the CPU while the CPU fan blows the air to the heat sink. Now the next thing which comes across when we talk about the computer hardware is the ports. When you turn your system unit, you must have seen several points. At those points you connect wires of keyboard, mouse, monitor, joystick. Now those points are the ports. In computer networking, the term port can refer to either physical or virtual connection point, like the switchboard as we are having in our home, where we connect the plug of the television, of the fridge, of other devices. Now those are also called ports. When we talk about the computer language, those connection points are called ports. Similarly, we have got ports at the back of the system unit, which is used to connect various devices, various you can say the hardware components to our system. Now this is the broad picture of the back of the system unit. Now you can easily see PS2 ports, which is with purple and which is with green. Now the purple one is for the keyboard and the green one is for the mouse. Now you can see the various USB ports. Now USB port is for the USB connection. Like we can connect our pen drives with this. Next is the Ethernet port. Ethernet port is for the networking purpose. We can connect the network wires with this. Now the serial port, that is for the dial-up modem. Next is the VGA port, that is for the monitor. In this port we connect our monitor. Next is the LPT one, that is the printer port. Here we connect our printers. Now the various circles which you see at the bottom, these are the speaker port, the line-in port, the microphone ports, etc. And the one which is with the yellow is the game port. So this is how our system unit looks from the back. You can easily turn your system at your home and you can see the back of the system. These ports are available there, and you can see that each port is responsible for various other components. Now this is all for today. Your homework is to write down as well as to learn all the computer technical terms which I have given you, which I have explained you in this video, like the full form of the SMPS, the full form of the BIOS, the full form of the RAM, etc. Okay, so now we will again meet in our second part. Thank you for all.